Unless you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. You can follow me on Getter at People's Pundit. Follow Laura over there as well. She is in my profile. What else? Let's see. If you like the videos, of course, on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But we implore everybody to please sign up at Rumble, at People's Pundit Rumble channel. And from there, you can see the Join Locals button. Now is a fantastic time to join Locals. Speaking of which, I got a little bit of an announcement. But before I do, you get exclusive content, you get embargoed polls, etc., and insight into how we conduct these polls. All right. We had our Zoom call with Ilan and Owen, who are going to help us with the book club on Locals. We are going to start with, ladies and gentlemen, hold on. Myths of Empire, Jack Snyder. I was going to start this with American Revolution stuff, early history, colonial history, and we will eventually, and we'll get into the ideological origins of the American Revolution. Gordon Wood, great book. But I'm telling you now to get a jump on this. If you want to read along with us, which you don't have to, you can come to the book club, and it will be on a Sunday afternoon. Most of us are people of faith, so it will be around 3-ish. Yep, it looks like 3 o'clock to give everybody a little bit of time to get home in case you do a late morning or an afternoon service or mass, praise and worship, whatever it is that you do. And obviously, it was tough. And there was not a lot of options. So hopefully that works for everybody. But if you want to get a head start, all right, you can go to Amazon and get the book. It's not even that much. It was Laura, April 7th to April 16th. So, and we want to give Ilan a little bit of time, leeway time, of course, to read the book, to play catch up. So ultimately, what we'll need is, a few weeks, but we are going to jump right into this. It's going to be great. I think Myths of Empire, which was Owen's suggestion to start with, he read it after I originally cited it while talking about something. And it is a good place to start because it's called Myths of Empire for a reason. The stuff you hear, like now, we're going to have Joe Ken on at the next hour to talk about Ukraine, who's Green Berets running Washington 3. The stuff you hear in the news and have for years over Iraq, Afghanistan, folks, it just goes on and on. Syria, Libya, Vietnam, Korea. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's all a load of crap. It's all a load of crap. And none of it holds up to any kind of empirical scrutiny. What happens is they appeal to your emotion. And they do the same playbook over and over again because it works. They cite the same nonsense you heard during the Iraq War, before the Iraq War, because it works. When I hear Joseph R. Biden come out and, look, this idea that the Russians are losing is nonsense. We're going to talk with Joe a little bit more about this as somebody who is actually a warrior. He knows the difference between how the U.S. fights and how Russia fights, have different strategies that they employ. Mm-hmm. This idea that Ukraine could stand up to Russia is a joke. So when I hear, they're losing, so they're going to use a chemical weapon, I hear false flag coming. That's what I hear. Yeah. Russia has no incentive whatsoever to use chemical weapons at all. They would risk isolating themselves and losing alliances that we've helped them form by pushing these people into each other's arms. Be much harder for Xi Jinping to maintain his support. And by the way, some of the things that I hear desperation in the voice of Westerners, the leaders. Why? Because I really feel like you're about to hear about decades worth of sins created and committed by the US and the West and Eastern Europe.
Truth.
They don't want you to know what they have been up to. They don't want you to know about all of the murder, wholesale slaughter of people, innocent people, funded by the US taxpayer. Programs that one day they acknowledge are there and the next they don't. That's what I hear, because that's the history of this. And unfortunately, many Americans just don't want to believe that our government is capable of doing this. And you want to pretend we're morally superior or something. Well, maybe our ideologies are, if you read Gordon Wood, but our practices are not. And that's just the reality of it. We stand for something that's morally superior. We often fail to live up to it.
So true.
It is, especially our leaders. Don't confuse yourself with our leaders. You put yourself in with their lot, and you are getting in the mud with the rest of the pigs. You throw yourself in with that lot, then they're going to let you down every time.
Those are the vipers.
Every time they will let you down. All right, so don't pretend like they share your values. They don't. Vladimir Zelensky is not some kind of, a brave, more virtuous leader of a Western democracy bulwark in the East. That's a load of crap. Zelensky is a tyrant. He's a tyrant. He imprisoned his main political opposition. To the right of him, he's got Petro Poroshenko's lackeys remaining in his regime, and to the left of him, he has neo-Nazis. He shuts down media that he doesn't agree with. He is no different. He's been on Zelensky's order. The murder of the people in the Donbass and Eastern republics has not ended since Poroshenko left office. Has it declined? Sure, whatever. A father who has to watch his daughter get shelled waiting in a food line? Well, it was just one 6-year-old girl today. Under Poroshenko, it could be 10.
Same playbook.
What the hell? So knock this so we're going to knock this nonsense off. And the only way to really do that is to talk about the work's real scholarship. You ever see anything written by Max Boot? You ever see any INR scholarship written by Max Boot? Has Bill Crystal written anything of value? I'm talking about a serious book, not one of those Mediaite books where they go on cruises to sell and Fox News has their cute little round table with Brett Baer and they push it about, all the stupid nonsense about, I'm Bill Crystal and look how cool it is to be me. I'm talking about serious scholarship. If you studied INR in college or security studies at all, right? If you studied that in college, I guarantee you at some point ran across some real scholarship. And no joke, a literal picture of Bill Crystal was there under, these are the idiots, do not do anything they say. So we're going to start with people who have been right. We're going to start with people who have called what is going on now for decades. Because NATO expansion and aggression, EU expansion, you could even call it too, was only ever going to end up here, where we are today. Which is hurting us. Because we are following these myths of empire, we have backed ourselves into a very difficult corner where there's really no good way out. It's like we either put up or shut up, or we let ourselves look even weaker, and China decides, I think I'm just going to go ahead and take Taiwan, which is, by the way, arguably a vital national security interest, whereas Ukraine is not. It is not. There is no Western interest in Ukraine for you. There's plenty of interest in Ukraine for the Western elites that keep pushing the drums of war, that keep, banging the drums of war. There's plenty of interest in it for Hunter Biden. There's plenty of interest in it for James Biden. There's plenty of interest in it for the big guy who gets the 10% kickback. There is no interest in it for you and I, your families and mine. None. So we put ourselves in these corners because we followed stupid things like the stupid ideas. Like there's still some mythical city of El Dorado out there. And if we just keep looking for it, we won't spend the entire Spanish treasury chasing a ghost. If we just stopped one domino, then we could stop the whole entire domino effect from rolling. Then that is what they're doing, by the way, with Ukraine. That's the argument. The argument is the old, now thoroughly debunked domino theory. We're back to this. If we just stop Korea from being communist, if we just stop Vietnam from being communist, it's unbelievable. But they repeat it because it works. If we just stop them in Ukraine, then Russia won't expand to Poland, to Germany. The horror. The cost, even if we don't get involved with direct military action, the cost to this position that we have taken will be great. That goes for your gas tank and the grocery store. The price will be high. The supremacy of the US dollar is literally at stake now. Russia will demand seriously that Germany pay them in their own currency for oil, and they have no choice. And our great allies in NATO, the weaklings that they are, because they cannot rely on the US to supply them oil. Because of Joe Biden, they could have if Donald Trump was reelected. They will have no other choice but to capitulate. The Saudis aren't even taking our call anymore. And Xi Jinping basically told Joe Biden a couple of days ago to go yourself. This is where we're at. They're meeting for this NATO summit, the extraordinary summit. I mean, these people really think they're something. And I want you to, I want to read something for the people who think that, NATO is still a defender of Western values and not a cabal of warmongering elites that are bent on aggression all over Europe, especially into the East. This is a thread, which I will pull up, from Michael Tracy. Now, okay? Oops, I should have not done that. This is a thread from Michael Tracy, who wanted to cover, for his paper, the NATO summit. And I'll make it bigger. All right. And go back, he even says, so it's supposed to be covering the NATO summit today for Unheard, but was rejected by the NATO accreditation office. I agree with the decision. Only at CNN, NBC, and the BBC should be allowed to cover major international events. It was also claimed that taking photos of the NATO accreditation office is strictly forbidden. This would sound all very Western to you, doesn't it? So very pro the freedom of the press. What a freaking joke. Coffee. Upon taking one, a Belgian soldier bolted over to me and demanded that I delete the photo from my phone, then had me go into the deleted photos folder and delete that too. Here was the original emailed explanation given. Apparently, there's simply not enough space at the brand new, gleaming 2,700,000 square foot NATO headquarters, which just opened a few years ago in Brussels. The head of security on site personally told me I'd been rejected. And this is what it says. NATO application for media accreditation, extraordinary NATO summit. I told you, I wasn't joking. Extraordinary, the extraordinary NATO summit. Classified, classification, NATO unclassified. This is not a briefing, ladies and gentlemen, where you really need to vet the reporter. I mean, you always need to vet. What I'm saying is there is no security clearance issue here. Thank you for your interest in attending the extraordinary NATO summit. Access in person is strictly limited. We regret to inform you that you have not been given media accreditation at this time. However, you will be able to follow the events remotely via the NATO website. Oh, so thank you. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master, for allowing me to watch these videos live. As a thank you. For further information and for the live stream on the day of the event, please consult the NATO website. Kind regards, NATO accreditations. They gave him the generic email. When I asked the military officer in charge of, quote, security, unquote, at the NATO accreditation office for further information about the grounds for my rejection, I was told that there was no one to contact except the generic NATO email address. I told you, anyone can get that. That's a public address. He then told me to leave the area immediately. The officially accredited journalists at these events tend to ask real tough questions, ultimately designed to provoke further military action. Absolutely. Absolutely. They're a bunch of Baghdad Bobs in training. Yesterday, CNN's notorious, and he calls her notorious for a reason, Natasha Bertrand, for those of you who don't know, that's Natasha Bertrand, tried to get the NATO Secretary General to commit to a red line around the use of chemical weapons, and red line is in quotes. Natasha Bertrand is a fake journalist. She is an intel asset. She is an asset of the intel community, posing as a journalist for Politico, and now she's at CNN. All through the Trump administration, she was one of the key fake journalists to repeatedly push out fake disinformation that we now know was just fed to her by the intel community. It was garbage, it was untrue, and it was meant to subvert the U.S. government. A duly elected president to accuse him of things that he did not even do in an effort to truly oppose a duly elected government. Natasha Bertrand is a fake journalist who was engaged in a coup of the prior administration. Andrea Mitchell, another freaking winner, on NBC continued the theme, asking, quote, if chemical weapons are used in Ukraine, how would it be morally acceptable for NATO to ignore Zelensky's plea for NATO admission? Unquote. Well, here she's just assuming. Miss Mitchell is just assuming that if there was a chemical weapon attack in Ukraine, that it would be Putin. Well, Rich, who else could it be? You don't think CIA is capable of killing a bunch of people with gas to frame the Russians? Then you're an idiot. That is what they do. That is who they are. They tried framing Bashar al-Assad. Please. Yellow cake. Yellow cake, anyone? George Tenet knew damn well that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were lying to the world and forcing Colin Powell to lie. That was really the beginning of the end when he sat there with his fat stogie and said nothing. Such a humanitarian entreaty by Mitchell, right? Even though it's effectively a call for World War III. Of course it is. She doesn't give a damn. She's not going to fight it. None of her children are going to fight it. I'll be closely following all the aggressive, skeptical coverage that will no doubt emerge from today's NATO summit, given NATO's policy of only granting access to a hand-picked selection of highly esteemed, accredited journalists. That sound like Western values to you, ladies and gentlemen? Tell me, where does the line between Putin and us start and end? His treatment of the media is horrific. So what is ours? What the hell? What the hell are we? Vladimir Zelensky, all of a sudden Sean Hannity's hero? He doesn't allow a free press. You question Zelensky, you're going in a hole. You want to run against Zelensky? You're going in a deeper hole. Ukraine is not a democracy. Ukraine is not pro-Western values. At this point, the United States isn't even pro-Western values anymore. So I think maybe the Sean Hannitys and the rest of them of the world should give a little bit more concern to the Eastern Soviet values that have taken root in the United States, and a lot less concern about the fake Western values of Eastern Europe. This is a total joke. Ukraine is as corrupt gets. U.S. officials who work Ukraine in the embassy in Kiev are as corrupt gets. This isn't some freedom fight. There is no damn difference. And I used Baghdad Bob before. That's what the entire Western media apparatus sounds like right now. Russia's losing. Russia's losing. No, they're not. And if something does happen, it'll be right before Zelensky is forced to flee Kiev because he bet on the wrong horse. And then they'll do something and blame it on Vladimir Putin. And I'm not over here cheerleading for Vladimir Putin. I'm so over these intellectually feeble people. Oh, you're pro-Putin. You're pro-Putin. Is it pro-Xi Jinping to admire how the Chinese have been whooping us for 20 years while we sit here and squabble with each other? The British, look, I'm not here to put anybody down. I'm simply calling balls and strikes here. A spade is a spade. We have, with these stupid, irresponsible, and reckless policies, we have created a balancing coalition that we have no prayer to confront. No prayer. You think Russia's weak? You do so at your own peril. You think Xi Jinping is going to flee and not back Vladimir Putin? You're out of your damn mind. You think India is suddenly going to come back because they love Donald Trump? Nope. Israel always has to kind of like walk on eggshells when a Democrat is in the White House. That's been true since Bill Clinton. Full-throated support when a Republican's in, except for, George Bush did betray them a couple of times. It's just truth. They're over there naming settlements and roads and highways after Donald Trump. But now they have worse than Barack Obama. Because at least Barack Obama was existent and competent. And it wasn't a group of imbeciles just basically running the White House because he twiddles his thumbs in the middle of the night and soils himself. One good thing, I guess they can say out of it, is that at least through Donald Trump, they made better relationships with Arab countries. Arab countries that right now are about to sell oil to China with the yuan, whatever. And are not picking up the phone for Joe Biden. Somebody actually tweeted me the other day saying that under Joe Biden, NATO is getting stronger. No, it's not. First of all, stop saying NATO because it's the United States. Under Donald Trump, you wanted them to pay for their own membership, which they never did. And that is called a very typical bandwagon. You want to spend money on domestic policies at home so you can win elections. So instead, you get the very stupid and naive people of the United States to pay your bills for you for defense. Donald Trump comes along and says that's not going to happen, especially not from you, Merkel. Especially not from you, Germany, since we're here because of you. Kick out. Kick out. But now we're back to the old status quo. You think Joe Biden's going to force them to pay their fair share? Absolutely not. So by definition, NATO is weaker. Do you want to try to calculate latent and military and economic power? We can do so. Britain is weak. They're not a naval empire anymore. They're a laughing stock. The French? The hell are they going to do? Throw croissants at people? Couldn't even count on them when we were attacked on 9/11. Has it been that long people don't remember freedom fries? Germany could be a powerhouse. Unfortunately, they went nuts twice in the last century, and they're no longer allowed to have a large standing army. The Japanese, who I have long advocated, let them go. They don't need our help. They don't need our defense. Their country isn't filled with a bunch of welfare, government sycophants. They can defend themselves. And I say this to you, Japan, do not let the sissified West take your identity from you. Thousands and thousands of years of rich warrior culture. You're going to need it. You're going to need it when we fall and we're no longer there to protect you. And the days are long gone of you whooping the Chinese. Easily. Those days are gone. You're going to have a fight this time. So don't let us rob you like we robbed the Nords. For instance. All's great. At least we'll get, what? I can't even remember. They're so damn insignificant. There are two countries that wanted to join NATO now. It doesn't matter because they have no army. Of course they want to join NATO. Of course they do. For the same reason everybody else wants to. Not to contribute, to suck the life out of us. They're not going to send battle-hardened Vikings. Finland. Oh, praise God. Donald Trump was right. We should have taken Greenland. Should have taken it. Just taken it. Should have just taken it. Sweden and Finland. Thank you. Thank you. Who said that? X Summer? Yeah. And Lamp. Thanks. That's right. Sweden and Finland. Like I said, though, guys, whatever. They can sit there and throw snowballs at people. So we'll have the French throwing croissants and baguettes. We'll have Finland and Sweden throwing snowballs. While the Chinese whoop our ass all over the Western Hemisphere. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. But that's why we're starting the book club. In all seriousness, because it's not like, you may never know this from media coverage, people like Mika Brzezinski actually having a show in the morning thinking she's an authority on this, as if her daddy wasn't one of the biggest idiots foreign policy had seen in the 20th century. Might as well just be right up there with Irvin Kristol. Never listening to their betters, because believe me, these guys are their betters. And women. There are female international relations scholars. Predicted this. The people who actually know what they're talking about were ridiculed, mocked. And this is not new. Once they saw what we were doing with the post-Cold War era, this will eventually lead, of course, to catastrophe. As all aggression does. And it is aggression. Whether you want to admit that or not, it is aggression. We are not spreading democracy in Ukraine. Shut up. Enough. What we are spreading are shells that hit children and women. According to Tom Tillis and Lindsey Graham and Sean Hannity, that's Putin and it's punishable by death. Well, what about us? What punishment fits our crime? What punishment, ladies and gentlemen, shall fit our crime? So, this stuff just gets dumber and dumber every day. Well, Ukraine's a democracy. No, it's not. No, it is not. Zelensky is an authoritarian. He is essentially a dictator. When you have political opposition and you throw them in jail, you're a dictator. When you have independent media outlets who say bad things about you, so you shut them down and persecute them, you are a dictator. When you kill innocent people who want to be a part of another country and never asked to be a part of your stupid little country, you're a dictator. And by the way, don't think for a second that there is some huge majority in Ukraine who sides with Zelensky. Zelensky's approval numbers were in the garbage. The garbage before this happened. For those who don't believe me, actually. You know what? Hang tight, because I need to support that, and I'm going to. 1 second. This is how popular Vladimir Zelensky was before all this happened. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Thank you. Copy URL. We shall be sharing this URL. Well, this schmuck knows better now, too, than Harvard and a lot of them. So funny. In general, do you approve or disapprove the activities of the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky? Okay, I know it's like scrolling slowly here. Bear with me. As we rolled into the holidays, 57% disapproved of the job Vladimir Zelensky was doing, only 28% approved. His high was in June of 2021 at 34% in this particular survey. Now, we can, of course... Oh, by the way, this isn't exactly some right-wing source. This is Statista. All right, so... why was this the case? Because a large chunk of the country doesn't want to even be part of Ukraine. The country before this conflict was essentially split 50-50 on whether they wanted to be pro-Russia or whether they wanted to be pro-West. And the West is heralding this man as if he's some kind of freaking hero with a unified country. Democracy. A unified democracy. This is such a joke. Do not let yourselves get duped by these idiots. Do not. The end here is inevitable. Why do you think Zelensky now is running to the table? Perhaps we should accept Vladimir Putin's terms. Because he's running an effective counter offensive against the Russians. Some other schmuck actually saw the Russians are stuck 40 miles away from Ukraine. They can't even get in the country. Somebody tweeted me that the other day. Last night, I think. Last night it was. Only you, or 2 nights ago, only you would think Russia is something to be afraid of when they're stuck in the mud 40 miles away from Ukraine. Oh my God, how foolish do we get? How foolish some people get. Do we have a poll on who is to blame for high gas prices? Well, we didn't ask that specifically, and I'll tell you right off the bat, others have, and they blame Joe Biden. I think it was Rasmussen asked, and then was it Harvard? Emerson, I think. Somebody asked, after Rasmussen too. But I didn't even need to ask that. I thought about putting that in there, but I don't need to, because I know when people started telling us that gas prices were rising and that inflation was that was their number one concern. And it was months and months before this Ukraine thing even got off the ground. All right. So, and I see someone asking about McConnell. It's funny you say that. We were going to go over congressional leaders' favorability ratings, and I was going to do that before we got Joe Kent on. All right. Which is very soon. And I'm going to take an early break because Joe's up at the top of the hour, and then Dom will be on after the interview with Joe. All right. So that's why I'm kind of mixing all of these questions in the conversation they're doing right now. All right. But yeah, people do absolutely blame Joe Biden for the gas tax. And then I see some stuff here is for Don and I both. So we'll do that. I'll wait for Don. All right. But for now, let me get rid of this and let me bring up the congressional ratings. Schumer took a hit this month, as I've actually applauded Schumer for. He's done a very good job at kind of hiding in the scene, behind the scenes. So there haven't been a lot of Americans who particularly dislike him. This is starting to get worse now. This is the second month where Schumer has been in the 30s with favorability ratings. And normally, as a big unheard of, no opinion. But normally, this favors him, as is not the case with Kevin McCarthy, for instance. Schumer has done a good job keeping his favorability ratings somewhat manageable, even though negative. All right. This is now the second month where we've seen some real problems. So for all of those people who told me, Rich, no, don't do that. Don't take that out of there. We need to track that. I'm so glad you did. And I'm so glad I listened, because we would have missed this. Why does it matter? Typically it matters going into a midterm. Is anyone improving at all? Is anyone getting worse? The problem Republicans have, as I've said, day after day, month after month, is that at least their Schumer's own party, Nancy Pelosi's own party, likes them. All right. And let's look at third party, and then we'll separate independents. Among independents, obviously it's not good. He's in the 30s with favorability. But look at the Democrats. He's at 70% favorable with Democrats. Excuse me, 60%. 60 plus, 61. That's not bad. You have about 20% of Democrats who have an unfavorable opinion of him. Republicans, about 14%, so 14.2, whereas 54% have a very unfavorable opinion of Chuck Schumer, and another 14.5 have a somewhat unfavorable. And people say, well, how could that not be 90%, Rich, for Republicans? It is when we look at presidential kind of level name recognition. The truth is, and I think it's fair to say this, it's not a dig, but there are some party voters who tend to be more informed than others. That is true. But generally speaking, people don't follow congressional leaders as much. They just have the general impression or feeling about how they may view them. And then that can matter as to something like the generic ballot. I have seen some people's generic ballot tighten a bit. I think I know why that is, that's happening with them. And I think they're wrong. I still do think it's around, 8-point leads. I wouldn't be shocked if, it was a 6, this past month or whatever. By the way, the new April 2022, since we are raising quickly, that's up. So you can go to bigdatapol.com/public polling project and contribute there. If you do not forget to write something that you want. And I love that you guys say, hey, great job. That's great. And put that at the end of your comment, unless you really don't care. And it's like, whatever we decide, then, I get why you do that. But if you have something specifically that you hope to see in the poll, by all means, add that in your comments. Even if you're an anonymous contributor, I can still see it. Okay. The loudest, I can't promise you it's going to be in there, but the loudest voices win. All right. Or as my old dad used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, Richard. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. All right, so we can look at independents and third-party voters together, and you can see, especially when we add those third-party voters, Schumer's favorability rating goes down even further. All right, so nowhere near 30% there. All right, let's look at McConnell, though. But notice again, like I said, notice again that the vast majority, at least 6 out of 10 in their own party, have a high favorability. They give them high marks, Schumer and Pelosi, both. You'll see. All right, even though Pelosi got worse this month. All right. All right. Now, McConnell, only 9.7% of his own party have a favorable opinion of him. Let's go back again so you can see the difference. Very favorable for Chuck Schumer in his own party was 28%. Somewhat favorable was 33%. Mitch McConnell is only 9.7% and 32.9%, somewhat favorable. So overall, he can't even get a majority of his own party to say that they have a favorable image of him. In fact, 1 out of 5, twice as many who have a very favorable, have a very unfavorable opinion of Mitch McConnell. You might notice, and this is now how many months we found this, there have been months where the Democratic percentage, or the percentage of Democratic voters who have a very favorable opinion of Mitch McConnell, was actually higher than the percentage among Republicans. Now, it's basically the same, 8 and 10. It's just out of the sampling era. So generally speaking, nearly as many Democrats have a very favorable opinion of Mitch McConnell as do Republican voters. That's bad. And Mitch McConnell's very favorable among independents and third-party voters is 4.6%. If we split them up even more, independent, true independent, no party affiliation, 4.3. Third-party voters, which is what something else is, I know I repeat that, but just for new people who might jump in, 5.8. All right? And, of course, you have some really bad, 60% kind of numbers for unfavorable among independents. That's really not good. I mean, about half of Republicans have an unfavorable opinion, and that's a good month. 14% are saying they don't know. You really think that's the case? I don't know. All right, Nancy Pelosi, though. Oh, really quick. Sorry. Combined, very unfavorable for McConnell this month was 33. Somewhat unfavorable, 22.6. So taken together, we're looking at about 55% unfavorable if we round, okay? Why does that matter? Because typically Mitch McConnell has the highest unfavorable rating, but not the highest very unfavorable. This month, Mitch McConnell's overall unfavorable came down from about 60 to 55, whereas Nancy Pelosi, who typically has the highest single percentage of very unfavorable, yet just under McConnell combined, Pelosi actually took slightly higher this month to surpass Mitch McConnell as the most unpopular congressional leader. All right. So when it comes to very favorable, overall, only 16% have a very favorable opinion of Nancy Pelosi. But look, that still includes 34% of Democrats. Another 40% among Democrats, Nancy Pelosi is more liked than Schumer is. All right. So they circle the wagons here. Schumer only had a little over 6 and 10. She's got for every 3 out of 4, nearly every 3 out of 4, more than 7 and 10. She's almost at 75% favorability among her own party. Now, she bombs out with independents and with third-party voters here. You're talking about 18.2% with third-party voters, and you're talking about, 25.7. Or 26.7. I mean, with independents. That's terrible, obviously. All right. No, I was right the first time, wasn't I? No, right the second time. All right. And then somewhat unfavorable, 13.2, which is actually lower than very favorable. But in the end, her strong feelings. And you might notice that there's a lot less undecided with Nancy Pelosi. People know her more. All right. But the very unfavorable number continues to be the highest. It's just that now combined this month, she is the most unpopular. But where does very unfavorable come from? overwhelmingly, Republicans hate this woman. 8 out of 10 Republicans have a very unfavorable opinion of Nancy Pelosi. 8% of Democrats do. Almost half of independents combined. Independents almost set about, we can round to it, so almost 7 in 10 have an unfavorable opinion, with about half saying, 49% saying, that they have a very unfavorable opinion of her. And even, by the way, she elicits more of a response among third-party voters who are consistently the largest chunk of never heard of, no opinion. 33.4% of third-party voters have a very unfavorable opinion of Nancy Pelosi, while another 21% have a somewhat unfavorable, leading to a grand total of 54.4% unfavorable among third-party voters. So you have about, it's bad, guys. This is bad. This is the only thing at this point, though, really as good news for Republicans, is that they are more, at least Democrats are more disliked their leaders than Republicans, or at least for this month. Because typically, it's Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi going away, and then Schumer and Kevin McCarthy having a rather large, unheard of, no opinion, which tends to help them keep their overall negatives at least lower. But here we do continue to see Kevin McCarthy's negatives in the 40s, all right, where his favorability is about 30%, 29.1. It's not great. But when looking at him compared to Nancy Pelosi, there's no contest. So that is at least something that Republicans can tout, which is not a great thing. Well, I may not be popular, but I'm less unpopular than you. I mean, Donald Trump at this point is by far the most popular politician in the United States of America. Even if you think Emerson was a little bit high. Nobody comes close to Donald Trump. Not even Barack Obama at this point. Unless, don't send me some garbage YouGov poll, all right, to try to dispute that. I'm talking about people that I know and I trust, and also including my own. I know because I have been asking favorability for Donald Trump around the country, and it's extraordinarily high at this point. I'm actually a little stunned at how high it really is. All right. And maybe I can actually even show you something. I don't know, though. I'll send a message, ask for permission. And if I get it, I will show it to you. Okay. Because there are areas where you would never think that Donald Trump really could make a comeback. It's like, well, it's just such a bad, toxic area for him. Some places just don't like him. And, that's still true. Don't get me wrong. But he is making a significant comeback, which is pretty incredible. Is this a public cross tab or a private one? Bear with me 1 second. I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right one. I don't want to give away something that I don't have permission to give away. Just let me see if I got it here. All right. I do indeed. Okay. Okay. So is this the latest one too? I just want to have it on hand so when I hear back, I can do it. I can put it out there. All right. So, yeah. So we're getting to a point now where he's getting popular in areas we never would have thought of. That's really it. Anyway, so that's it for Kevin McCarthy. It's 12:50. I'm going to have to take an early break here. So when we come back, we can go over more, but then also prepare for Joe Kent to come on, because I can't wait to get his thoughts on Ukraine, the direction of the Republican Party. And then also, in case you haven't noticed the theme here, these are candidates who the establishment absolutely wants to stop. In fact, these are candidates who some in the Republican establishment would rather see lose to a Democrat than actually get into Congress, because whether they want to acknowledge this or admit this, the truth is they fear as well, not just Democrats. They fear a returning Donald Trump who is more powerful than ever because he actually has people elected to the Congress who support America first. the fact of the matter is Donald Trump's biggest enemy, was it really Robert Mueller? Was it the FBI? Was it the intel community? Was it the Democratic Party? Was it really? Or was it betrayers and frauds in the Republican Party? Because all of those could have been fought off easy, or easier, not easy, but easier, had Republicans had his back. But they didn't. From U.S. attorneys that he appointed to offices like the Southern District of New York, just stepping aside to let the wolves in, to Jeff Sessions, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Hell, folks, Jim Comey claims to be a Republican. What they fear is the replacement of these people, or many of these people, elected, appointed, of people who actually are loyal to the voter and to Donald Trump. Donald Trump wouldn't have appointed Christopher Wray if he thought John Ratcliffe would get through, right? Or somebody else. There were other, Ratcliffe really was for DOJ, others being considered there. Would he have appointed Bill Barr if he thought he could get Ratcliffe through, right? Would he have appointed, look what they did to Jeff Sessions, and many of them served and were friends with him for years. So he was forced to pick some of these duds, and Democrats still fought them tooth and nail, but he was forced to pick duds who would never do their jobs and never have his back, because you got to work with what you got. And the Senate, especially the Senate, is filled with a bunch of frauds, Republicans who are frauds. All right. Which is the start of one of your questions, by the way. I was kind of teeing that up a little bit. All right, so we're going to take a quick few minute break so we can come back, get more into this before Joe gets on. Then we'll talk to Joe Kent. My good friend Don Smith's going to join us as always in the second hour as well. And we'll do some more Q&As, talk a little bit about what Don's coming up on the weekend. More back, of course, we'll have a lot more on Inside the Numbers in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. When, special thanks for the Bowen Band, the theme song's done playing. Hang tight, folks. We'll be right back.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Nah, I couldn't help myself. Laura's over there trying to do her job, and I'm just like, NPS, Ukraine is not a democracy. I just couldn't help myself because it's just true. So if you're watching Inside the Numbers, all right, don't forget, of course, if you like the video, to hit the like button on, hit the thumbs up on YouTube. If you're on Rumble, give us a Rumble, one of those pluses. It's right below the video. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to both if you're not already. All right, hit the notification bell that will let you know when we're going to go live. Rumble will just let you know because they're good like that. And while you're there at Rumble, check out the Join Locals button. Join the data revolution at peoplespundit.locals.com. Great time to join. We have a lot of stuff coming. All right. And by the way, locals, that is the idea we're moving towards. By the way, if you missed a book club announcement, I'll do another one soon. But we're also going to do what's called, it's really just a password protected article. All right. So it's not like a paywall, but you will have it if you're locals, and you'll be able to look at a lot of these other. I've been building charts galore. All right. So more than just the registered voter economic confidence index. What about the employment rate? Right? That they've shown us, then how many people have told us last month or this month, and right, that they're employed full-time or they're employed part-time, but looking for full-time, right? There's so much in these polls that we do. There's a level of granular data in these polls that is offered by nobody else. Can we just get real for a second? I mean, thanks for your PDF. Really. I'll take, I would really rather have detailed crosstabs like that I could really get into the juice of it all. All right. But you know what? It looks like Joe's here. And if he's ready to go, then I'm going to bring him in because I get as much time with him as possible. All right. So without further ado, let's bring in Joe Kent, Republican candidate against Butler, the Trump impeaching Washington 3 Rhino. All right. So, Joe, thanks for coming back. Welcome to Inside the Numbers.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
As always, my friend. So I got to go right to Ukraine here. I always tell people is you're really a different kind of animal as a Republican candidate who's a veteran. So many of these guys come in, and I'm a veteran myself, and I'm not trying to pick on veterans, of course not. It's just so many of these guys come in and then just want to fight every single war. There's never a war that they haven't, that they've been confronted with that they're not willing to start and fight. Well, of course, they send you to fight them. They don't fight them, but there's no one that they say no to, Joe. And here, this is the same playbook over and over and over. And I'm starting to hear all of these noises. Russia's losing, so they're going to launch a chemical attack. I mean, first and foremost, let me get your overall opinion, and then I want to ask you, as a soldier, as somebody who was on an ODA, I want to get a little bit more specific about the nonsense we hear about the Russian military on a daily basis. But overall, what's your opinion on what's going on in Ukraine overall?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that there is a massive price to pay when America is weak on the world stage, and then our weakness starts at home. When America is weak domestically, the rest of the world suffers catastrophic results. I mean, when we had President Trump in office, we had a president who made us domestically strong with energy production. We were a net exporter of energy independent. We had a strong economy. We were effectively using the tools of diplomacy, our economic strength, and only when we needed to did we use precision military operations. Now, Vladimir Putin and all the other bad actors in the world, they saw this. They saw that Trump was not a dove. He would use force when he had to, which I fully support, when it's right, when you can define a vested national security interest. But he wasn't about to get us involved in endless wars, bleeding out at the far ends of the world for no real gain. And he also realized that we had to be domestically strong, and we could use our economic strength as our main tool for leverage. Putin runs off of the oil economy. When we were independent, when we were energy independent, we were taking away from his one commodity. We were also going to the Europeans and telling the Europeans, hey, don't come complaining to us about Russia and how much you need for NATO when you're buying oil from them. And Trump prevented the construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that allowed Russia to pump oil into Europe. So Trump, on every single major lever, he was leaning on the Russians. And then also there is the predictability factor. They knew that Trump would use force when he had to. So when Trump said things like, don't mess with Ukraine, it actually carried some weight. Now, Biden is the exact opposite of that. Even before he came into power, he had a 40-plus year track record of being wrong on every major foreign policy event. And then we saw what happened in August, the botched Afghan withdrawal. We saw how incompetent our military leadership is. We saw how incompetent that Joe Biden is. He left Americans on the field of battle. We let 13 of our own get killed on the way out. We flew over 100,000 unvetted refugees into the heartland of America. So on every way, we really greenlit Putin to conduct this offensive action. Now, I think really since 2014 or even before 2014, the way that the West has been violating the containment doctrine laid out during the Cold War, at the beginning of the Cold War by George Kennan, by pushing NATO up onto Russia's border. We've been inviting this, and this really started heavily in 2014 when we encouraged, supported, led, however you want to describe it, the Maidan Revolution that put this new democratic government, air quotes around democratic, in power. And that brought a Western-favored government right up on the borders of Russia. And so really, if you're Vladimir Putin or if you're the leader of Russia, regardless of who it is, how are you going to react to that? I mean, I can tell you exactly how we'd react. If you look at the Cuban Missile Crisis,
That's right.
We took pretty strong, drastic action. If Putin was doing the same thing in Mexico City or in Quebec, we would be taking strong action as well. So I just don't see any realistic solution. And the way what we're doing right now, it's one thing to use sanctions or to use some military aid to the Ukrainians as leverage to get Putin to the negotiating table, but to take all those tools and throw them all in at once and say that we're going to kick Russia off the SWIFT system. We're going to use maximum pressure sanctions. We're going to give the Ukrainians lethal aid. We're going to label Vladimir Putin as a war criminal. And so what option are we giving Putin right now but to fall right into the arms of the Chinese Communist Party and to put him against a wall? And you never want to put people against a wall, especially a powerful country like Russia, whereas we could be using pragmatic diplomacy to say to both the Ukrainians that, hey, look, the Western cavalry, it's not coming. We're not going to supply you guys forever. Geography and history, they don't lie. You guys are a buffer state between Europe and whoever's in power in Russia. That's a reality that you're just going to have to accept. That's history. That's geography. We can't change that. And to say to Putin, look, do you want your legacy to be that you are the guy that handed over your economy to be subservient to the Chinese Communist Party? Or will you meet us halfway, stop the violence, stop the killing, stay within the world economy, stay on the dollar? It's better for you. It's better for us. You can do business with us. I think these are very pragmatic, realistic solutions we should be working towards. But instead, we have the neoconservative, the neoliberal establishment that's running around screaming things about democracy and making these foolish analogies about how we have to stand up for everybody who's being picked on throughout the world, leading us into one of two scenarios, essentially, either a World War III scenario, because, I mean, Biden did the foolish thing by saying that there's some form of a red line around chemical weapons, which is very loosely defined, that may innuendo towards NATO involvement. That's World War III. I mean, that no-fly zone, that's World War III right there with a nuclear arm power. Everything that we worked so hard to prevent during the Cold War, that could come to light. Or the Russians create this parallel economy that's already underway, and the Chinese challenge our status as prime reserve currency holder, and they stop buying our debt, and they crash our economy, which is how the Chinese prefer to fight. So I just think we have a real vacuum of real adult leadership right now in Washington, D.C.
That's an understatement, Joe. That was 4 minutes of reason. That was 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, of the voice of reason. That was reality right there. And this is what I worry about, because under Donald Trump, we never would have gotten here. It's that simple.
Right.
It never would have gotten here to begin with. But now he's really put us in a bad position. Joe, we either have to escalate so we look like we have a backbone, because post-Afghanistan, we're basically a paper tiger. And he knew it. He knew it. And he said, and a couple of months ago, I would have said to those who were, concerned about Taiwan, calm down, Chicken Little. But now at this point, the only thing holding them back is what you said, which is that they really just don't prefer force. The Chinese, they're smarter than that. They go about it a different way. Otherwise, I think we'd already be there. And at this point, I don't know. We'll just have to see. I don't want to, give anybody in Taiwan a heart attack, but I just don't see a way where we can, not with this current leader and not with the people who are in Congress. I don't see a way where we can regain control of this situation, because, the Afghanistan withdrawal was a disaster. What he allowed to go on really just, it sent all kinds of bad signals to people like Putin. And then it just continued from there. It really wasn't always, it wasn't only Afghanistan. And now he's put us in a position where we either have to react or potentially suffer even worse consequences. And I want to bring this up. This was our latest polling. Amazingly, the people who want to fight or want to see a world war
Yeah.
don't want to fight it, Joe. They don't want to fight it. You know, it's incredible.
Every time.
But every time, you know, and you see some Republican support for, you know, all out, whatever the consequences. 31% of Republicans said, yeah, whatever the consequences. Now, the vast majority, you know, over 60% said no. But independents, look at 13.4% strongly support. I know it's small, so I'll read it. And 16.8 somewhat support. They have no interest in this whatsoever. And I see some real danger. I'm just, you know, that people can go and look at the numbers, but those are them. And I see some real danger of Republicans throwing away their generic ballot lead here, because the coalition that is saying, yes, I'm going to vote Republican in 2022, have no interest in this whatsoever. Overwhelmingly, their number one issue is inflation and cost of living. They don't care about Ukraine, Joe. They don't. And it may sound callous, but that's the truth. They have their own problems. We have our own problems. You mentioned currency before. You know, when the Saudis don't pick up the phone for the U.S. president, when the you know, when Xi Jinping basically tells Biden to go, you know what, this is not good. This is not. So if Republicans do retake the House, is there going to be a danger in that you're going to have some of them, and that's why these primaries like the one you're in are so important, because there's going to be a danger of Republicans fighting amongst each other about how to handle these situations, what, you know, position to support, instead of trying to regain sanity.
Yeah, I think it's a huge risk. I mean, we've seen a ton of Republicans right now, with a few exceptions, that have gone along with this, either vocally and advocated for insane things like no-fly zones, crazy Lindsey Graham talking about assassinations of a head of state. I have no idea how Lindsey Graham still has any committee assignments. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar like tweeted a cartoon and they got kicked off their committees, but Graham can advocate assassinating a head of state. But murder. I mean, like, that's, again, World War III. Here we are. So, but we unfortunately have a lot of Republicans, like the woman I'm running against, Jamie Herrera Butler. She thinks that it's not a big deal to go along with the consensus. So she'll vote for the $14 billion of lethal aid going to the Ukrainians. She'll pose with the little Ukrainian flag. And that's what I think actually the silent majority of Republican leadership is doing. They know that most of their constituents, like you said, they don't care about Ukraine, but they know that the special interest group deeply care about Ukraine. They know that the military industrial complex deeply cares about Ukraine. They want this war. America, Main Street, does not want this war. The Beltway does. And so they're hoping that people don't pay attention to foreign policy. But this is where we need to educate people and say, this is up in your face, because if this goes sideways, A, it's World War III. B, I mean, this is going to crash the U.S. dollar. Everything you just lined out. The Saudis are looking at, you know, using yuan. That's the death. Yuan in exchange for petro. That's the death of the petrodollar. Our entire economy runs on the petrodollar and runs on debt. I mean, if people think inflation is bad right now, the direction that we're pushing this crisis in Ukraine and pushing Russia, it's heading to that. And so, unfortunately, I think we just have to be vocal and let the Republican establishment know that we see what's going on. And it's a heavy lift, too, because the media is so all in on this conflict, supporting Ukrainians. And that's not to say I don't feel compassion for people that are fighting in Ukraine, and they're fighting for their homeland. And I do respect that. However, there is the broader national interest at stake here. And that's where I think we need people to actually be pragmatic and sober. And also, we need Congress to exercise its constitutionally appointed duty. The only body in our government that can declare war is Congress. Yet we're allowing the president to sleepwalk us towards war, because Congress is like, well, here you go. Here's $14 billion more and some tough talk that leads us even closer to war. If these elected officials feel so passionately about us going and freeing Ukraine, they should be back in their districts right now, laying it out for the American people exactly what the cost in blood and treasure will be. But they're not. They're just attaching this stuff in these massive omnibus bills, completely reckless and irresponsible.
Yeah, and with some of those follow-up questions, you know, between the media and between the dishonesty with even elected leaders, there were so many people who didn't understand what enforcing a true enforcement of a no-fly zone would really mean and what it would lead to. And then you tell them that at first they're like, yeah, sure. I definitely think we should stop Russian fighters from killing innocent people in Ukraine. That's what they think. But then you tell them once a fighter shoots down a MiG and a Russian pilot dies, it's almost assuredly World War III. Then they back away from it. But right now they're being told lies. And one of them, you know, as a warrior yourself, Joe, speak to this this narrative that the Russians are. I had someone tell me this just a couple of days ago, that the Russians are bogged down 40 miles from the border and apparently they're weak and we couldn't defeat goat herders or not long term anyway. We're going to take on Spetsnaz now, Joe. Are you kidding me? I mean, is this really the priority here because MSNBC tells the American public that the Russian army is weak?
Yeah, I mean, we were also told that once we crossed the Burma and we got into Iraq, we'd be greeted as liberators. And I mean, that we defeated Saddam's army in pretty short order, but everybody knows the rest of the history there. So I would be very cautious about a lot of these so-called experts that are, you know, pointing at maps and saying like, oh, well, Russian logistics are just horrible. And yeah, maybe that's true by our U.S. standards. But look, the
Right.
maneuvers that Russia is using right now in Ukraine, they're not sophisticated, they're not new, but the Russians, they have the people and they have the will to go do this. And again, this is a point where we've pushed Putin into a corner. At this point, what other options does he have? He's been labeled a war criminal. I mean, we labeled Saddam and Gaddafi war criminals. Look how it turned out.
Yeah, they
for
die.
them.
War criminals die.
They die
They
horrible
hang.
deaths. Yes, they
Yep.
hang. They get whatever happened to Gaddafi. I mean,
He's
so
stuck like a
really,
pig by his own people.
yeah. So we're giving Putin this, you know, zero-sum game, and people are talking about the ballistic missile systems that he's using, and some are saying, well, this just shows that he's running out of missiles, or it shows that he's willing to use nukes. Well, I say either one of those scenarios is actually pretty catastrophic, because either way, he's showing that he has this weapon that can deliver nuclear warheads, and he's willing to use it. Why would we continue to push him into this corner? And look, the Russians, we've only been at this for a month. Look how long wars last for, even our modern wars. It took us 20 years to get out of Afghanistan. We're on year 19 in Iraq. We had a little break there when we left, but we had to come back. If you look at how long World War II was, this war in Ukraine is in its infancy. I mean, Putin going in there of shock and awe and capturing the capital overnight, that's a pipe dream. Maybe he told some of his conscripts that, or some of his generals told him that to sound good. But really, the Soviet army, or the Russian army, will go in there and they will encircle these places. They will inflict very unsophisticated mass bombing attacks, and they will essentially starve and brutalize their way to get what they want. And again, like, we're forcing that scenario, and then we're also laying out the parameters for why we would have to get involved. Like, if they use one chemical agent, look, there's a very broad definition of what a chemical agent is. Like, we use white phosphorus in Iraq and Afghanistan. So are we saying, is the line, if they use white phosphorus or something like that, then we're going to get involved? So now the longer we let these war escalation go on, the more catastrophic all the results are. Like, it doesn't play out in any sustainable way. And the neocons and the neolibs saying that, like, we can give the Ukrainians enough of what they need, a no-fly zone, that eventually it's going to topple Putin. The only end game can be regime change in Russia. It's just absolutely foolish talk.
Yeah, I don't see their real end game, because to me that's not realistic at all. You know, we've gone over this before. You know, there's some polls that are garbage in that part of the world, and some that are decent. Yeah, he is in a position that no U.S. leader has found themselves in a long time. It will take a lot more to get Vladimir Putin's approval rating, you know, where Joe Biden's is. It's not realistic at all. Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, compared to U.S. standards, the man's a rock star in his country. I mean, I don't know where they think they're getting this support from. By the way, I just pulled up Zelensky's. It's garbage, you know. So while everyone's in the West is admiring him, he struggled to get to a 30% approval rating. So I just don't know where they're seeing these internal politics play out in their favor. I don't see it. And to me, like what you said, the longer it goes, we're just adding to the death toll, because the Russians don't fight the way we fight, Joe. They don't do that.
Yeah.
We're used to surgical shock and awe. They're not doing that. I think you nailed it. It's like an encirclement. It's not sophisticated, but it's brutal, and they have resolve to keep it up.
Yeah, and he's got a template in Syria. I mean, really, the only reason Assad stayed in power was the Iranians and the Russians, and Putin actually was able to affect that with a very small footprint, using these same tactics, though, of encircling towns. Obviously, Syria is a lot smaller. It was easier for them to maneuver in. However, That's their template. They don't mind throwing a large amount of people and equipment and just sheer brute force at these equations. And if it takes them a long time to accomplish it, then so be it. They've been at the Syrian conflict now since 2012. You know, you look at what they did in Chechnya. That's where Vladimir Putin cut his teeth, was in the Chechnyan wars. It's the exact same thing. So I think the U.S. military analysis of this, by and large, is very misleading intentionally, or just way off the mark, or somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
It's just not realistic.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is this is part of this? Because I know that deception is part of their game, but is this I worry more that they believe this. You know, that's at least some part of our military believes this, and some part of our national security apparatus is that foolish, which kind of scares me even more than the deception. I think we all get used to the deception, but the fact they could be this misdirected, this far away from Kennan, you know, is to me scary, because you know, if these guys were still around today who crafted containment, they would be having a canary over our policy. Now I do have a couple people I have questions for you. You know, what would you rather see Republicans focus on other than beating the drums? When you're on the campaign trail every day, what do people want to talk about with you? And what are you talking about with them? Because it's not, you know, can we rush in to fight a war? You know, where would Joe Kent take this conversation?
So, I mean, right now, what's up in people's faces is the inflation. It's the economy. That's got people freaked out. I mean, the price of the pump is really hard to get by for most Americans. We're approaching the $5 per gallon mark out here in Washington State. And so, you know, unless you're making whatever that stat was, $400K a year, this hurts your everyday life, which is the vast majority of the people in the district, especially our working class people. You know, I was talking to a young man today at a construction site, and he said it basically cost him his entire paycheck just to keep gas in his car. And it's a rural community. So it's like, these are the issues that are really hurting people. But the good thing is that most of these issues, they have such geostrategic origins. People are really starting to see that now. When I think a lot of times in 2016, when Trump and America First people were talking about bringing back American energy, bringing back American manufacturing, you know, making a tight labor market via immigration, it was kind of abstract. It was kind of like you sort of had to be a little bit in the geeky weeds of policy. But right now, everybody I talk to, whether it's somebody working at a construction site, somebody working in tech, or even just stay-at-home parents, like, they understand why we have a failing supply chain. They understand why the price of the pump is so expensive, because they've seen the night and day difference between the two administrations. They remember how things were before COVID, or even at this point under the height of COVID. You know, and then also, I mean, we just had our COVID restrictions lifted here in Washington State. We've had some of the harshest restrictions as far as vaccine mandates and all that. And so they're gradually coming off, but people are very wary, especially if this last omnibus bill that went through, that there's still more money baked into the federal government for COVID, so that it could be turned back on at any time. So people are looking at that with a very wary eye. Election integrity still comes up all the time. I mean, people want to hear that we have a plan to adjudicate the election of 2020, and that we're going to take concrete steps to get rid of these unsolicited mail-out ballots, to get rid of closed code tabulation machines, and enforce some form of a national ID for voting. So those are really the big issues. Immigration, the southern border, the expansion of massive amounts of crime. My district's right in between two failing sanctuary cities. We have a highway that runs right through that connects them. So the uptick in just petty crime, violent crime, fentanyl. We've had a couple of police officers get killed here recently. Like, those law and order issues are still, even though the riots have dissipated a little bit here and there, those law and order issues are still really up in people's faces.
Yeah, just last month before the Ukraine did kick off, which are like a lot of crime voters, which I think it was number 3 last month in our polling, moved over to foreign policy, because that's what happens, you know, national security, foreign policy. But that will dissipate, and they'll return to those core issues that they have continued for a year to cite day after day, month after month. So, you know, I think there's a real danger Republicans overall could squander some of their advantage worrying about issues that I almost see this as a trap set by Democrats. I know that so many Republicans will join in on this, you know, beating this drum, so I'm going to do it, to take the conversation away from those issues that are they're going to crush us on those issues. And so far, unfortunately, that's working for some people. I mean, that's just the truth. Your
He's
opponent in the primary is one of them. You know,
Mhm.
so how do you guys feel about where you are today? When
We're
you're
feel,
on the ground.
we're feeling pretty strong. I mean, a lot of people are just sick of obviously the incumbent for her wide variety of horrible votes, but most recently voting for the 1.5 trillion omnibus deal because it had a couple earmarks in it for the district. I think that old logic of, hey, you have to bring back
Yeah.
pork for the district to keep people happy. I just don't think that resonates with voters anymore. Like they're basically like, why are you voting for these omnibus bills? We don't have this money to print. We already have massive inflation. I mean, you don't need a PhD in economics to figure that out. And so people are very frustrated by that. She voted for the vaccine tracking database. She's taking money from big pharma. The vaccine mandates just absolutely, brought all kinds of horrible things upon our district and people here they're still hypersensitive of. So it's reflecting in the polling. We've had some independent polling from Trafalgar. So we're still in the lead as far as Republicans go, beating out the incumbent. She's getting a bunch of corporate special interest group type of money, but we're nipping on her heels really as far as fundraising goes. So she's raised about 2 million. We're at about 1.5. I'm not taking any corporate PAC money, so we're feeling a good deal of momentum out here. We just got our third endorsement from a GOP Central Committee the other day, and we just won the straw poll in another county. So doing well so far.
Yeah, I gotta applaud you for something because it's something I lament quite a bit. But so many candidates this cycle, they've gotten that Trump endorsement and then just kind of sat back, and hung out. And I could roll through the list of names. I've done it several times already, but you have not done that. You got that endorsement. You kept trucking like you were 20 points behind, man. And that's the way elections are won. So I really have to applaud you for that because I think Trump had this model, but he's Donald Trump. And the power of that endorsement, it does, of course, bear fruit, but you still have to work for it. I can't imagine how some of these people just got it and then sat back, and you did not. You're not taking anything for granted, and that's doing a service to your voters because your district is that very blue collar, tough district. It always is every year, but it's that blue collar district, and I guarantee you, they don't want to talk about entanglements and spending money we don't have. They're too concerned about, like that gentleman you cited, they are too concerned about putting gas in the gas. It's the grocery store and the gas pump every month. It's the same thing we hear every month. So good for you, man. Good for you. Tell people where they can learn more about you, follow you, and what you're doing on the trail.
Yeah, go to joekentforcongress.com. That's where people can support me. We're running all individual contributions. GOP is funding my opponent, and we also have the radical left out here. So joekentforcongress.com, $5, $10, $15 helps us push back against the establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, come back. Keep us posted. And I'll tell you what, I've been trying to find an excuse to poll Washington 3 just because I want to. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah. We'll see what happens there. I'll explore it a little bit further. But in any event, come back soon. Tell us what's going on, and keep us up to date. Always appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All the best, Joe. All the best.
Take care.
That's Joe Kent, ladies and gentlemen. Washington 3 running against Butler and impeacher, and all in all, a general establishment person, you just heard him. He's like fighting on all fronts. This is why I like having candidates like Joe Kent on and others, because Republicans have a historical advantage this time. True. But I'm telling you, they can get a 2-point win in the popular vote, or they can get an 8-point win. Washington 3 is a great example. You think those people who work their butts off, who are working class. I know an old school strategist. He loves Washington 3. It's where he cut his teeth in 3 districts out there. And Washington 3 was always difficult for a Republican because they had that working class blue collar base. But now that's not their base anymore. So as this changes, is Butler really the face of the Republican Party that should represent that new coalition? I'm just being objective here. Does Butler represent the constituency that is part of the new Republican coalition? She does not. Absolutely not. Big Pharma and company. No, sorry. I mean, that's not subjective. Well, I like this one better. I like that one better. No, Joe Kent represents the district better. and it should be about good government. And that's that. All right. We'll have Don on soon. I don't know. Maybe he was waiting for the interview with Joe to end. But yeah, I did forget that. I did it again. You know what, Joe, if you're listening, I forgot to ask. It doesn't matter. You know what? I'll ask him off air anyway, Laura. But I'm just curious because of what he did in the military. There were different ways back then to do that. And it's changed so much probably since Joe went through it. And I think I joined the Army, and it was almost right after 9/11. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about how it is now. And I'm curious to see what he thought of that as well. But yeah, so since, basically, and by the way, before this made news, I hate to keep going back there because it is falling into the trap a little bit, but those guys were gone from Bragg. It's not even their area of responsibility. At least I don't think so anyway. The 5th is Campbell, right? Yeah. The 1st is Washington, where Joe is. I didn't even think Eastern Europe was their area of responsibility, but it doesn't matter. They left Bragg a month before any of this was national news. So, which tends to happen sometimes, but just find timing all very interesting. Really do. All right. So with that in mind, yeah, going back to this, I just think that this is a Democratic trap. And it's easy to spring a trap like that when you have people like Joe Kent's opponent, Butler, when you have people like Lindsey Graham. I mean, the asinine comment. I'm so glad Joe Kent brought that up. Asinine comment. Let's murder a world leader. Don is laughing. I see him in the queue. Let me just bring on Don because that ran a little later. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
Let's murder a world leader, Don.
Sure.
Because, sure. Why not? Lindsey
Why
Graham
not?
said so. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Nothing better to do today, so.
Well, what'd you make of the interview? I got a really simple question. Who represents Washington 3 better, considering the changing coalitions? Those working class blue collar voters in Washington 3. That's the voter that made it so hard for Republicans to carry it in by little margins. They had affluent rich whites, basically, and a coalition of some others. But the Democrats used to carry Washington 3 because of the voter that is now voting for Joe Kent.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's the district, which is why it was always so hard. Republicans would have to appeal to some of them and then win more affluent voters overwhelmingly. Basically, the roles have changed, completely reversed. So tell me, you can be impartial and say one candidate represents a district more than another. That's not, me picking favorites. Does Joe Kent not represent that district? She does not.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I want to echo too what you said, because it's so important, and a lot of people don't maybe realize it. So it's great to get the Donald Trump endorsement. That's a big deal, but you can't just sit back. Then you got to work it every day. You got to be focused as a candidate on getting points. Right? It's a game of numbers. It's a point. We're inside the numbers. So he's working it. And I really love what he's doing. I watched him at CPAC and he was all over the place. He's working hard. So that's what everybody, and that should be important to everybody looking for somebody to represent them, is somebody that has a work ethic. Let's face it, Donald Trump 2016, he won that election because he just flat out outworked Hillary Clinton.
That's right.
A lot of things baked into the cake, but at the end of the day, it was because he worked it.
I'd love to get in the field in Washington 3 and see what is going on. And I did see that poll from Trafalgar, but I would me, I'd always rather do it myself. But the bottom line is, I'm glad you brought that up again, because he does, man, he works. And so 1.5 million, and that's low dollar stuff. I mean, he had a fundraiser with Trump, but he's getting contributions from people that are following him, from people that are listening to him. I mean, before, it's almost like they can't, this Ukraine narrative, you would think it plays well to Joe Kent because he has his military background. Butler has no idea what the hell she's talking about. Like he said, she's just stepping in line. She's just falling in line because that's what people like her do. They're not leaders, whereas, but it actually, could serve the Democrats' interests here, because Joe Kent is by far a stronger candidate in a general election. I don't care what anybody says. In a general election, if you think Butler is a stronger candidate, you don't know the district. You don't know it. It's really that simple. You want to snag the Democratic base out from under them. You need Joe Kent to do that, because they weren't voting for Democrats because of social issues, Don. They were voting for them because they were pro-worker. They were the pro-worker party. They are not now, but they were. And I'm just, basically thinking in my mind, if you wanted to drum up something that could, put somebody like her back in the running, it would be something like this, which is amazing because of his, his military background again. But he doesn't want to talk about that, because the voters don't want to talk about that. And the media and the Democrats, and yes, the Republican establishment, in order to stop this insurgency of America First candidates, they need to distract the voter to do this. Yep. You know it. You've seen the polling on and on. We've polled how many districts? Which one would you prefer? The Republican Party to go back to the way it was, or to follow the America First agenda? It's not even close. It's not close. There's no constituency for these people. Don't they get it?
Yep. Well, yeah, and I think one of the keys too, if you look at somebody like Joe Kent, and if you're looking at anybody, any candidate where you're looking, and we're talking primaries now, so Republicans against Republicans, look for the ones who aren't afraid to call out the leadership in our party right now, because that's our biggest problem. We talk about a lack of leadership with Joe Biden and this administration and all that stuff, which is all true, but we have a lack of leadership in our own party. And so when you hear somebody like a Joe Kent who's not afraid, right? He's not afraid to call them out. He's not afraid to call out the state GOP. He's not afraid to do any of those things. Those are people with I'm going to use the word again. We use it over and over again. Conviction.
Yeah, it matters.
So if they're afraid to call out somebody like a Kevin McCarthy, or in this case, a Lindsey Graham or whatever, damn well what they're going to do when they get to Washington, D.C.
Right.
If they're not going to call them out now on the campaign trail in a primary, they're sure is not going to stand up to them in Washington, D.C. So I think that's an important
thing. Especially when they get the NRCC to threaten to not help. And I mean, this is the way this is run.
It works.
Somebody asked, I'm gonna backtrack and do some other topics people brought up, but while we're on it, somebody had asked, Richard Warder asked, but doesn't the establishment Republicans falling into this Dem trap give more opportunity for the populist group like Joe in the primaries? The populist needs to run against both to win. That's a really good point, but they're fear. That's what they're trying. It's fear. So you can cloud the mind of 30% of Republicans and split that vote by scaring them. And that's what, and by the way, for those who pretended to be America First, they all supported the Iraq War. Donald Trump came along. Maybe they warmed up to him right away. Maybe they didn't. Some of these conservative talk show hosts but now they're right back to being the Bushites they were before Donald Trump. They're doing damage. And I'll refer to them as the Hannity Republican. All right. I'll refer to them as even Laura Ingraham. All right. They're getting Republicans to scared. They're scaring them into thinking, well, I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be pro-Putin. And that's a false choice. Does Joe Kent strike you as a weak guy because he just isn't an idiot who wants to start World War III? Does he strike you as a weak guy? The color of the beret on his head was green. Sean Hannity couldn't do that if he wanted to. All right. So I'm dead serious here, man. Take that MMA, I'm a tough guy crap and stick it where the sun doesn't shine. The Putin party nonsense is really starting to bother me. Just because he's not an idiot who doesn't fall for hyperbolic maniac kind of arguments. These are not logical arguments that any of them are making. They're not. And when somebody like that stops and says, well, wait, what is your objective here? And here's the potential outcomes if we do what you're saying. Where do you see your end game? Define that for us first, and then tell me where it's worth it. You're just thrown in the Putin wing. Well, we have to be strong. We got here because we were weak. No, you don't want to recognize we're in a bad position and we're just in a bad position. And making a stupid decision, pretending to be strong, is not going to fix that. It's not. Look, Don, I hate to say this. I want to know if you agree. We're just screwed at this point. He backed us into this corner. We don't have the power to get ourselves out. We don't. And we don't have the leaders at the moment to be taken seriously. So any foolish or rash decision we make, all in the name of being stronger and taking a bolder stand, could simply lead to an even worse outcome. So what about if we continue to show weakness? China's going to take Taiwan. They're probably going to take it anyway. Why? Let me just say one sentence. Joe Biden is the president. That's it, guys. If Donald Trump was the president, then we would not be here today. Not because he would run off and go start a war. Not because he would run off and defend Ukraine. They may think that he'd do something totally asymmetrical. So Putin obviously calculated it was not worth it. NATO was still on their border when Donald Trump was president. He chose now to strike. And Joe is right. The Chinese don't want to fire a shot. They don't need to. They don't need to. They could probably take Taiwan economically. I got news for everybody. I mean, so do you agree with that assessment? I mean, the argument I'm basically making is all of the Ingrams and the Hannitys and the Levins and all of these people making these cases, you want a response we're incapable of making right now. Joe Biden's never going to be the president you want him to be. Republicans currently elected in Congress are never going to bring him to a place where Donald Trump was. No amount of support with the purse string is going to put us back on that footing. We're screwed. It's that simple.
It is.
I hate to tell everybody.
Well, yeah. And so anything that you hear all these people talking about all this stuff, you hear Hannity's and all that, and you know how I feel about Hannity. Love the guy. Just love him. He's my best bud. But anyway, all these people talking about all this stuff, like, okay, so just take the one, right, which is the no-fly zone. All this stuff had to be set up ahead of time. America can't just come in now unless we really want to get into World War III and we really want to go all out on this thing. We can't just all of a sudden start sending people in here. We can't start controlling the airways. They have control of this right now. Biden watched all this happen. He watched them amass the troops. He watched all these movements, which, by the way, didn't happen until who was gone? That's right. The guy with the mean tweets. So to do something now, to say that we're going to, and now you've got the rest of the world sitting back looking at us going, what are you guys going to do? What are you going to do? As I said before, stay out of this war. That's what we're going to do. Stay the hell out of this war. But you can't come in now and pretend like you're in charge of everything. All the things that Biden's taking credit for. Look at Nord Stream. Okay, we shut down Nord Stream 2. No, you didn't. You had absolutely nothing to do with that. The EU shut down Nord Stream 2. He had nothing to do with it. These people over here now, the chuckleheads, over in doing the whole NATO thing. You know what they're talking about? Don't be fooled, people. What are they talking about? Do you think they're talking about how to protect lives in Ukraine or stop Putin? No, you know what they're talking about? Climate change. Climate change.
The extraordinary summit
Smart
where they
meters.
talk about climate change.
Got to get off of oil. It's going to be really tough. Boy, he told us yesterday we're all screwed. Food shortages. It's going to be real. It's going to be painful. It's going to affect us here. He's setting, I said this at the very beginning, long before Putin did anything. This is a war of convenience for Joe Biden and his administration because everything has gone to you know what. And so and now he's trying to preface everything he screws up over the next 3 years. Well, that's Putin's fault too. So it's a convenient scapegoat for him. But as far as, what do you guys want to do? You want a response to what? The Hannitys, the Levins, all these. What do you want? What do you want to do?
What do you want?
What do you want? Tell us. Just say it. Bill Kristol, he'd probably be at least say it. But
at least open enough to just admit what he wants. I mean, he believes, as all neocons do, in the primacy of U.S. power and to use it to shape the world in our image. That's what neoconservatism is, as if they're godlike or something. Again, that is a myth of empire, and it's not possible. That's what's so foolish about it. No country has the resources to do that. All right, even the great one and only superpower of the United States. It is not possible. But yeah, just you just started to address one of the questions. But real quick, just before I didn't know him while I was, which is why I wanted to ask him about. Although he always did look familiar. But guys, I mean, there's so many different groups. I don't know. I think he was in the first group. I don't know which one he was in, but even if you could be in the same group and never really bump into anybody because they're different teams. I don't know where he went. I didn't see him at Sand Hill. I didn't see him at the special warfare. Or maybe he did, but he does remind me of this guy Hess from West Virginia. I'll never forget him, but I almost got peered out for being an ass. And it was like, Jersey, you get more flies with honey or more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. I was one away from being booted. Yeah, and I took that to heart, and he kind of reminds me of Hess quite a bit. But yeah, on what Jay Patel said, this is for both of us. He said, first, Putin is a piece of crap, However, I do love that he stands against globalization, Facebook, the Soros. And what are your thoughts on this? And I think, Don, this really speaks to what you were saying before. With all of this really had to be in place before, Donald Trump understood that, of course, he's the leader of Russia, and he is always going to look out for what is in the best interests of Russia. He is not a globalist, like the idiots at the summit. I mean, this is the problem. They're talking about things that are just completely unrealistic. You're going to what? Confront Putin by ending the oil industry? Is that realistic right now?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, there are things, Don, that I do have to say. It's not that I admire him as a man. I admire the decisions he made. He was under no illusion about how the West would eventually treat him. And he took the steps, like Joe Kemp brought up, to basically, and Barnes and I did a whole show on this with What Are the Odds, how to insulate the Russian economy. So every time we whack him with these sanctions and the SWIFT move and everything, it doesn't really hurt him, and it doesn't hurt his standing domestically, despite, all of these ridiculous insinuations that we're going to get the people of Russia to overturn a leader who has more than 70% approval rating. I mean, this is just a total it's fantastic. I mean, it's not reality. And, speak to that. I mean, I will be the first to admit, I'm certainly not pro Putin, but I do respect how he governs. He's smart. He's a smart guy. He's not some maniac, Don, like Lindsey Graham would have you believe. He's just some maniac who wants to go back to the USSR. He hated the USSR. He calls them the Bolsheviks for a reason. He felt that they sacrificed the Russian identity to push communism. He thought they were imbeciles. This idea he wants to reconstitute the USSR. It's just nonsense Western talking points.
Yep.
If you can't admire someone or at least acknowledge, Don, where they're smart, you have no hope to defeat them. No.
Yeah, but okay, so that's the thing that's going on right now. And I heard you talking about that earlier, and you're absolutely right. So this is this thing that you can't acknowledge factual information without being you're on your team Putin. It's insane. And who's doing that? The media, right? That's who's doing it.
That's right.
They've been doing. They're still TDS is a very, very real thing. So let's talk. Okay, I'll throw out something that I admire about Vladimir Putin. He's against woke culture, right? This is when he started really getting sideways with our media here in America, was when he started doing the stuff about, he actually believes that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. I know it's radical. I know that's way out there. But
even have a Supreme Court justice, Don, acknowledge biology.
Mm-hmm.
Sign up at Rumble.
That became an issue during the Sochi Olympics. When he was on the world stage, he had his Olympics there. That's when that became an issue, because it became an issue within the Olympics. So it was that, and there were some other things that came up during there regarding terrorism. And he's against, obviously, radical Islamists, jihadists. He's against all that too. That's when he started getting sideways with our media. So now here we are today. And if you say anything that's factual about him, just a fact about him, some of the things that you mentioned, that Jay mentioned, you're team Putin. Look at the election, the 2016 election. 4 years, we heard everybody's a Russian bot. These people are insane. These people are absolutely insane. So, I mean, this whole thing is just crazy. We weren't prepared for it in any way, shape, or form. Diplomacy was, as he was amassing troops on the border of Ukraine. That's when diplomacy needed to be taken or handled by this administration. They did absolutely nothing. Now their answer to the American people is suck it up, Buttercup.
Suck it up. Suck
Gonna
it
get
up.
tough
That's
out
it.
there. It's gonna get tough out there. But just remember, it's Putin's fault.
But it's convenient because it was
Yeah.
already tough out there, as our polling showed.
Right.
Huge majorities of people telling us that they're paying way more than they ever did for meat, way more than they ever did for stapled goods at grocery stores, gasoline, on and on and on. And that was not going to change even if we didn't have this conflict on. That was still going to continue. Gas prices were still going to rise. We haven't even hit the driving season yet. Food shortages were there before this happened, and this is not going to fly because Americans know this. They know it.
Right.
You know, so that's a really good you know, basically someone had asked that it would be good to ask about food shortages and Biden shipping food to Europe to alleviate their food shortages, but telling the American people to basically suck it up. Well, I think, you know, we got to that. I mean, it's a dumb political move and it's not going to work. And Don, this is a real simple question for Mr. Gates. This is all true about mooching from other countries. Why don't America First types just running from office just lay this out? The public would nod along in agreement.
Yeah. What's
Don and I
going
have been asking ourselves this for years, ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on right now is this whole thing, everything that's happening, and I'll even throw something else in there that's not political in a second here, but all these things that are happening right now prove everything that Donald Trump ran on, and the way he ran the presidency for 4 years, America first. So the more we get intertwined with everybody else, the more reliant upon them we are. This is not, it's not like people didn't say this when this big push for globalization was going on. Everybody said this, and now here it is. So one more thing Donald Trump was 100% correct about, and we need to really start taking this seriously. So that's but to go back to Joe Kent, that's why, you know, again, I admire the fact that he'll call people out and say, hey, we can't just keep going down this path. McCarthy, he's on board with all. Lindsey Graham, I mean, you know, all these people.
They want to go back to losing.
They do.
They want to go back to losing.
Yeah, they do. And I don't know. I'm not sick of winning yet. So we had, well, I guess we haven't been winning much for the last year, but I wasn't sick of winning. But geez, guys, great job. You got rid of the mean tweets. So
yep.
Awesome. And
that's why, by the way, Emerson's poll, 59% favorability rating Donald Trump. And people are like, you really believe that? Well, you saw California, Don. He was toxic in that area. Toxic.
Yep.
And they're like, you know what? +4. Ha! +4? That's a 16-point swing. And by the way, these are people who told us they did vote against Donald Trump. So it's not like, you know, it's a sampling issue. No, it is not. These are people who are basically, and I tweeted this the other day, what's been remarkably consistent is they got rid of the mean tweets. Good for them. What's remarkably consistent is that less than 2% of Donald Trump's voters in 2020 say they would vote for Joe Biden. At least 8% of Joe Biden's voters, upwards of 12, would vote for Donald Trump. That's a net swing on the low end of almost 6.5 million voters. And that, by the way, that's the low end. If it was 12, then you'd be talking about, you know, upwards in the 9s. So that would actually destroy my thesis on the Republican ability to win the popular vote, because Donald Trump absolutely would win it. He would. You brought up diplomacy before, and you think Zelensky, this is from Sandy, is Zelensky serious, is a great question, about settling on some of Putin's demands, or is he just trying to buy time? That's a great question, but I'll tell you, I'll let Don answer. But I'll just say this, barring a CIA false flag event, all right, like they use chemical weapons and blame it on Vladimir Putin, or they help the Ukrainians use it and blame it on Vladimir Putin, which they are absolutely capable of and will do. I do believe that's coming. Barring that, Zelensky can't really buy time because, as Joe Kent rightfully pointed out, they never planned on helping Zelensky. He miscalculated badly. He screwed Donald Trump. So for all of you Trump supporters jumping up and down, praising a dictator like Zelensky, and he is a dictator. You shut down media companies who oppose you, you're a dictator. You throw your political opposition in jail, you're a dictator. You murder people in whole swaths of your country because they don't want to be part of your country, you're a dictator. All right, so I'm so sick of this, Zelensky and democracy nonsense. This guy is an authoritarian. All right. He's a comedian turned something very not funny, at all, which is an authoritarian of any measures. Not at all funny. I don't know. What do you think, Don? He's biding time, hoping the CIA comes to his rescue by popping a couple canisters, or what do you think? I think the other day when he said we may need to, I think he's deadly serious. I mean, at this point, he's openly stated that that we don't want to be NATO, or maybe we need a proclamation from us, but we would need NATO to say that they're in agreement. So Zelensky's word's not good enough. Zelensky could go and be replaced to a year from now. He could be gone. Zelensky's an egomaniac, John. That's exactly right. I mean, this is ridiculous praise of Vladimir Zelensky. And again, like Joe Kent, I admire the resistance. I do. I admire anybody who fights for what they believe in. It's not them per se. They're a deeply corrupt country, and Zelensky is not a man to be admired. He's just not. I mean, this is crazy, man.
Yeah,
we're supposed to have our daughters admire Kamala Harris, who did what to get to power. I never want my daughter acting like that to get ahead in life. Do you want your daughters doing that in life to get ahead? You want them to whore themselves to get ahead in life? I don't. Now we need to praise Vladimir Zelensky? I think we need to worry a little bit more about the threat to Western values at home, Don, and not praising fake Western values in Eastern Europe. All right? But I'll let you.
Well, yeah, no, and that's a great question. I think right now, I made the comment that this is a war of convenience, and I was saying this long before this happened. I said it as soon as the troops started amassing on Ukraine, because I knew we weren't going to do anything. I knew this was going to happen, and I knew that this was going to be the de facto cause of every problem we have in America. But I think when it comes to Zelensky, okay, so he was brought into power to get rid of corruption. That's what he won on. He was going to end the corruption, right? So this is the Burismas, the Joe Bidens, all this, we all know the story there.
The Obama planted regime. That's what he won against. They hate American involvement. They hated it.
But he didn't do that. So he was failing. He was failing in his country. And I saw you showed some numbers earlier on that. So when I said this was a war of convenience for the Biden administration, it's also a war of convenience for Zelensky. And that may sound crazy because they're the ones but this took all the spotlight off of all that. It gave him a platform to be a hero, a global hero. And so he's running around with the cape on right now. I do admire him for standing up. I admire him for staying in the city and, doing the things he's doing. But let's face it, this has become a war of convenience for both. So is Zelensky going to give in to Putin? I think that's a false choice too, because I don't think Putin wants any signed paper from him. I don't think that's what Putin's looking for. I think Putin wants Ukraine back. He feels it's his. He wants it back.
He doesn't want a Western bulwark on his Western border. It's that simple. I mean, he wants that. He wants Ukraine as a buffer between him and Europe. And by the way, at this point, can you blame him? I'm telling you, the first 4 minutes of anybody who missed Joe Kent's interview just a bit ago, the first 4 minutes of that man's open was the voice of reason. Finally, he's the only other one, Don, that has said it. If it was Quebec, would you take it? No, we wouldn't. Get out of here. If we lost the Cold War and the Warsaw Pact did not dissolve, but NATO did, and they moved into the Western Hemisphere and decided to put an Eastern bulwark in across from Niagara Falls, we would invade it. I mean, are you kidding me? It's so intellectually dishonest and such a fake moralism. I just can't stand it because it's not even honest. And if it is, then it's just blatantly naive. Just blatantly naive. Lindsey Graham, murder him because he was a murderer of women and children. Our own president just murdered women and children on accident, maybe, whatever. Another strike of convenience, by the way, another military action of convenience. He was looking like a weakling because of the way we pulled out of Afghanistan. So he ordered those strikes to look like a tough guy, and he killed an entire family. ISIS-K. And that's why I say, what is Mark Levin and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham? What exactly do they want? Because the last time Joe Biden tried to make a display of power in a rash decision to avoid being a weakling, he killed an entire family. So what now? What now would you like to see him do?
Yeah.
It's just to me, man.
He's running around today. He's at the military complexes over there, and he's the wartime general now. And this is what he always wanted. Hillary would have wanted the same thing. They all want to be like these wartime generals who make it look like they're these great people, and they want to go down. And Joe Biden, his entire career is about being historic. The unfortunate thing for him, he's going to end up historically being the historically worst president we've ever had in this country. But he is always about being, listen to him talk. Listen to when he says things. It's always historic. And look at, I mean, go back to the Hillary Clinton thing, right? The sniper fire thing, right? That was to show that she was this big, super military, genius. She was like a SEAL, But this is what these people do. And their
Landing
idiocy.
like in Okinawa.
Their idiocy gets us in really bad positions. People die, like you just talked about.
Yeah, and they put us in this really bad position where, and that's one of the questions: what will they do if there is a chemical weapon attack? Would it be just more sanctions, or I think that would be the rally cry to really get in and do something serious on our end. Unfortunately, I do think that's where it will go, and I do think they will do it. I do. I mean, if they feel like they can get away with it, then I really do feel like they'll do that, Don. In the end, however, Europe will do nothing. The rest of NATO will do nothing. They will ask us to get in a terrible position with it being already way too late, way too much delay that we were talking about this before with Ken as well. The Russians don't fight like us, folks. So don't you dare think for a second that they're just weak and we'll be able to fly all over the place and unchallenged. You're nuts. You're nuts. They're going to V2 us right out of the damn sky.
Yep. Look at 2 weeks ago. Joe Biden got up in front of everybody and he told us all. He said, this might get us in. We're going to protect every inch of NATO territory. This might get us into World War III, but we got a sacred obligation. Article 5, we've got a sacred obligation, so it doesn't matter. So suck it up if we do. Think about this, people. Think about being so flip about getting into World War III that you're like, Article 5. What was the biggest difference? This was something that the media hated. They attacked Trump for it. This is when we started hearing
Trump's going to get us into World War III.
When did they start saying that?
The 19-year-old who tweeted from Joe Biden's Twitter account when he killed Soleimani, Qassam Soleimani.
Yep.
Oh my, this was reckless. It could get us into a global conflict. And now this idiot wants to what? Fight Russia. He was afraid to kill Soleimani, but he's got no problem, with the Russian army.
But okay, so I'm a cause and effect guy. So I always look at the timing of when people start saying things. I'm a communications guy, so I'm kind of a geek on that kind of stuff. But I always look at the cause and effect. When do people start saying things, and why are they saying that? So we'll get into the. I'll mention the chemical weapons thing in a minute. But you had Donald Trump, who came out and was asked about Article 5. What was his response to Article 5? Did he said under every circumstance, we will, it doesn't matter what the reason is, we're going to war. Somebody does something to a NATO partner, we're going to war. That's it. World War III. It's baked in the cake because that's supposed to be some kind of deterrent to say that. Well, it's not a deterrent, number one, but that's when they started all the talk. He was the warmonger. You know why? Because it resonated on both sides of the aisle. People said, well, of course you would take a look at it and say, well, what are the, what's going on here? And do we really get involved in this or not? Or how involved do we get? There were conditions. It wasn't just a all in. If somebody does something to these people, even if they had it coming to them or however you want to look at it, we're just going to, that's it. It's a sacred, he said it was a sacred obligation that we have. Obligation. So think about that, people. This chemical war stuff. A couple weeks ago, I said, you wait, you're going to hear about chemical weapons because nuclear weapons wasn't scary enough for people. It wasn't resonating because it's not. when you think nuclear war, you think, Hiroshima, you think of, you saw the things of the bombs and the mushroom clouds, but when you think chemical weapons, you think kids and they can't breathe and everybody's got masks on, and it's more visually horrific,
It's a
which
show.
sounds
It's a
kind of
show.
crazy.
I
It's a
hate to
show.
say it.
It's
Yep.
more emotional. It's more emotional. So
Remember Syria? Remember
yes,
Syria?
yes, great example. Great example. So I believe we will hear that Russia did a chemical attack, but
Sadly, me too.
I would need to see some evidence. I'm not just going to believe our government. I don't care if I don't care who says it
Don,
from our government. I want some evidence.
The UN whistleblower report, it was obviously Bashar al-Assad did not launch that chemical attack. I mean, this is, nobody wants to even report. I think aside from Aaron Mate, nobody touched that. Nobody wanted to cover it. This is what they were saying was incredible, but they couldn't cover it because that's a playbook. And if they were to expose one instance of a false flag, God forbid, Americans would have to come to grips with the fact that their government is capable of such a horrific thing like staging a false flag chemical weapons attack and killing innocent people in the process just to get their way, just to get Donald Trump, to basically under control, or at least that's what they were trying to do. They wanted him to act. He would not. They did that. He had no choice. And it's like, you heard, for Fareed Zai, whatever his name is on CNN, Donald Trump became president tonight. That's what he said after that. Donald Trump became the president. No, Donald Trump became the president when he stomped your candidate. That's when he became the president. I mean, but in their minds, only when he submits and succumbs to these horrific Dr. Evil-like plans, that's when he becomes the president in their mind. That's sick, bro. That's sick. We got to get one more in here before it's up, and it's a change of subject. What happened with Mo Brooks? I'll let you rock out.
All right. So I'll say this in full disclosure here. A number of years ago, I did an event and spent some quality time with Mo Brooks. I liked him. I thought he was, and I still do. He's still one of those guys of conviction and all that stuff. But he was the other end of what you were talking about. You commended Joe Kent for his work and working it, and not just sitting back because I got the Trump endorsement. I think Mo's the other end of that. And I don't say that as a personal thing against him. He wasn't working it. He just figured that was the thing, and he started to go down and down and down in his polling. But that was really stupid. It's really stupid. I mean, he even knew it. He knew that he was what was gonna happen. He knew what the end result was gonna be. He did it anyway. Now he's running around doing interviews, kind of doubling down on what he did. And now he's, I don't know, kind of almost in the John McCain seat now, right? Where he's the reasonable Republican. They hate his guts, but he's gonna get crushed now. Yeah. But I think it was a really, really messed up situation. I think he really screwed up. And I think really this is probably it for him in politics. I mean, he didn't do good last round either. He was a shoo-in. Yep.
I mean, all he had to do was have a spine. I'm sorry, Mo, but it's true. And there's history here, ladies and gentlemen. So you have to understand Trump's position. Yep. Mo Brooks talked a lot of crap about Donald Trump when he was running for president. On camera somewhat, but a lot off camera. His people talked a lot of crap about Donald Trump. And Trump put all of that aside because he appeared to be a convert. And if Trump ever gives you a second chance, the last thing you ever want to do is stab him in the back. And those comments to make him look stupid, he's a conspiracy theorist, when probably 80% of the voters in his state believe Donald Trump, then you just make a fool out of yourself. And you're not standing up for some principle, all right, or what you believe in. You're not going to buy into the big lie. Bull. You were going down. And you thought you're lashing out. You're lashing out. You took the endorsement. You did nothing. Yep. Yeah, he wasn't even around Madison, which was his own base of support. It was somewhere that what's his name did fairly poor. He didn't do well last time, but Trump endorsed his opponent, or somebody else really, his would-be opponent. So he crashed and burned in 18. But basically he could have been it. I know there were a lot of people, including myself, who were like, look, a lot of people talk crap about Donald Trump. Get over it. He's a stronger candidate, and he's a solid guy, and you should back him. Instead, we all know the other way Donald Trump went. It didn't end up good. You had to sit with Doug Jones for a little bit, and votes that really no senator from Alabama should have ever cast. Ever. But that's what happens when there's internal stupidity like this. It ends up like that. Mitch McConnell got involved, wanted Donald Trump to really, go against a voter. And Trump made foolish mistakes at that point. But anyway, he comes back around, he extends you an olive branch, and you stick him in the eye with it. I mean, so now you're done, Mo. You're done.
Yep.
And you're not making a comeback.
Well,
it's not happening.
And you and I have been talking about this since before really even these midterms season kind of kicked off. We've been talking about, number one, you have an obligation. If you're going to get first of all, you have to decide, do you want that endorsement from Donald Trump? Because if you do,
for the right reasons,
if you really want it, there's some obligations that go along with that. So, but there's also how long have you and I been talking about that is going to be what's going to be thrown at you. You get an endorsement from Donald Trump, and it's going to all be about that. What do you think about the big lie? What do you think? And so we've seen it all before. Where has Mo Brooks been? He was like this came out of left field, and he had, oh my God, I can't believe they're asking this. We've been talking. Well, you should watch Inside the Numbers in the Don Smith Show, because we've been talking about it for like a year.
That's right,
now.
Man. That's right.
Know.
You have been saying this. Listen up, everybody. As a comms guy, this is what you're going to be asked. And you can handle it like Mo Brooks and crash and burn, or you can handle it like Kerry Lake, who knocked it out of the park. All right. You can sound reasonable while making them sound deeply dishonest, which is what Kerry Lake did. She just destroyed that reporter.
Byron Donalds. Byron Donalds did a really good job of it too with the CNN reporter.
That's true. That's absolutely true. You went over that too, I think, actually.
I did.
And there are some people who do it right, and there are some people who do it horribly wrong. Even if you do it horribly wrong, you better not come out of that stabbing the president in the back. Because if you do, then you really crashed and burned, and your campaign is over. Let me make that as clear. Your campaign is over. And now some of these people, obviously, Don, still have to learn the hard way. Well, what do you got coming up on Saturday, buddy? It's 2:07. We're going to cut rocks. Kick rocks. What do you got coming up tomorrow?
So tomorrow on the show, starting at noon Eastern time, the Don Smith Show, we've got Peter Schweizer talking a little bit about the Hunter Biden laptop. This guy nailed it.
How to get him back. Get him back.
He's awesome. So the book Red Handed is a great book. All those details are in there. And now you've got the New York Times and others coming out with New York Times specifically saying, oh, yeah, okay, the story is true. So this guy, I mean, he's taken all these attacks for having, and he's got the receipts. They're all right there. So we wanted to talk to him about that and see if there was any vindication there, anything on his end. But he brought up some really interesting things when it comes to the money, the Biden family. And he's got that trail. He's on the trail right now. So we're going to know a lot more about it, but he goes into some details about what he's already found out. So really interesting stuff. Dave Janda is on the program. Dr. Dave Janda just recently interviewed Peter McCullough, Dr. McCullough. So we're going to talk about some of the latest things when it comes to the pandemic. Of course, you're on with the latest polling. Look forward to see what you've got here tomorrow. Peter Hussey back with national security stuff. A lot of stuff going on at the Hudson Institute where he's a senior fellow at right now. Obviously, they're tracking Peter's all these different things. He's awesome.
He's great, man.
A lot of cool stuff.
All of this, too, by the way, at a moment when we have this thing with Ukraine going on. I mean, if you read Red Handed and you have read Peter Schweizer's work in the past before, how could we possibly talk about Ukraine with Joseph R. Biden as the president and not acknowledge that you're talking about a conflict where a president of the United States and his family has a direct financial interest in the outcome? This is corruption at the highest level. The highest level. Do you think if Don Jr. was on the board of Burisma and the roles were reversed here, there wouldn't be special committees on this right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely there would be.
Absolutely.
Impeachment articles drawn up, you name it. We got to remove the president before he starts World War III for his personal family fortune. That's what you would hear day in and day out, and Adam Schiff would be the lead on it. Mark my words. Mr. Ukrainian arms dealer himself. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, looking forward to that, folks. Don't miss that.
Definitely.
Noon Eastern Standard Time. Don Smith Show. Sign up for the Rumble channel. Don Smith Show on Rumble. Yeah, there it is. And of course, check out his locals. DonSmithShow.locals.com. We'll see you tomorrow, my friend. Talk to you.
Sounds
later.
good.
Let's
All
see
right.
you
Thanks,
tomorrow.
everybody. Have a great day.
That's Don Smith, ladies and gentlemen. Give Brenda our best, of course. And we're gonna go. But before I do, I will put a post up about the book club, where we're at on this, so you guys have some kind of reference for the locals community book club. There's going to be a lot more results going up in the crosstabs, and we'll discuss that. I wanted yesterday. Yeah, Mists of Empire by Jack Snyder. That's what we'll be starting the book club with. I wanted yesterday to do a stream, but with so much stuff going on that I didn't get a chance to do it. And we need to have a stream and talk about trust in institutions. So I wanted that to be for locals. So I'm going to try to squeeze that in actually this weekend. All right. But we have a couple of weeks before the book club. Mists of Empire is a little bit of a wait to get. It's back in print now. So many people are reinterested in it because of everything going on. So you can get it in Amazon if you have time, or Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, something like that around you. Pop in, see if they got it, so you don't have to wait for it if you want to read along. But it's a great time to join the locals community at peoplespundit.locals.com. Between the polls, the book club, there's so much going on there. There's going to be a lot of information you will absolutely not get anywhere else. All right. So with that in mind, as always, thanks for watching. Follow me on Getter at People's Pundit. Follow me on Twitter at People's_Pundit. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. If you liked our video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell, because that'll let you know when we're going to go live. But we are imploring everyone, sign up at the People's Pundit Rumble channel, because God forbid I make a comment like boys are born with this and girls are born with that. I could be gone tomorrow, like Charlie Kirk, right? Even Tucker got censored this week. So if they can happen to him, it can happen to anybody. All right. So if you're on Rumble, by the way, right now, that's the locals button right there. It says join locals, exclusive content, embargo polling, you name it, it's there. Plus a lot of information about how all of this is done to give you the tools you need to look at it, others, and describe what's credible, or discern what's credible and what isn't. As always, folks, thanks for watching. Locals, keep your eye on that crosstab link. I, of course, will let you know when more things actually go up. But yeah, check it out. All right. With all that in mind, everybody have a great and safe weekend. Thanks for watching. As always, special thanks to the Bowen Band for the outro song, intro song, theme song, Bad Habit. Be good, folks. Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away.